The universe holds its breath in the spaces between the stars, where silence reigns supreme and time dissolves into nothingness. We look up to the night sky and wonder if we are truly alone, or if the darkness hides ancient secrets. There is a profound stillness that settles over the human spirit when we contemplate the sheer scale of the cosmos. It is a feeling of being very small and yet strangely connected to the vast, indifferent machinery of the galaxy. Somewhere in that endless dark, a small rock has been circling the sun for billions of solitary, silent years. It is a traveler from the dawn of time, carrying within its dusty heart the chemical blueprints of our origins. For eons, it drifted through the cold void, unnoticed and untouched by the chaotic drama of life on Earth. But we reached out across the abyss to touch this wandering stone and bring a piece of it home. We sent a machine, a robotic emissary of our curiosity, to sail the black ocean of space and find this rock. The mission was a gamble against the odds, a fragile hope cast into the unforgiving depths of the solar system. We named the vessel OSIRIS-REx, a title that evokes the ancient gods of rebirth and the mysteries of the underworld. It launched on a pillar of fire, leaving the blue warmth of our world for the freezing vacuum of space. The journey was long and quiet, a silent cruise through the emptiness where the sun is just a distant burning star. Year after year, the probe fell through the dark, guided by mathematics and the whispers of radio waves from home. It was hunting a ghost, a shadowed remnant of the solar system's violent and chaotic birth some 4 billion years ago. The target was Bennu, a name that sounds like a breath of wind in a quiet, empty desert canyon. It is classified as a primitive, carbonaceous, near-Earth object, a dark accumulation of rubble held together by feeble gravity. This asteroid is not a solid rock, but a pile of debris, a cosmic graveyard of dust and ancient stones. It spins in the dark, a diamond-shaped enigma that has witnessed the death of stars and the birth of planets. To look upon Bennu is to look into a mirror that reflects the face of the universe before we existed. It is blacker than coal, absorbing the light of the sun and keeping its secrets hidden in the deep shadows. The surface is rugged and hostile, a landscape of jagged boulders and sliding gravel that defies any safe landing. Yet we were determined to touch it, to steal a handful of its ancient dust and bring it back to Earth. The spacecraft arrived at Bennu and began a delicate dance, orbiting the asteroid with the grace of a falling leaf. It mapped the surface in exquisite detail, searching for a place to rest its mechanical arm for just a moment. The gravity was so weak that the probe did not orbit in the traditional sense, but rather drifted alongside the rock. Every maneuver was slow and deliberate, a silent ballet performed in the vacuum where no sound can ever be heard. The scientists on Earth watched and waited, their breath held as the data trickled back across the millions of miles. Then came the moment of contact, a brief and violent kiss between the machine and the ancient spinning stone. The sampling arm reached out and touched the surface, blasting nitrogen gas to stir up the sleeping dust of ages. For a few seconds, the timeline of human history intersected with the timeline of this primordial, wandering rock. The probe pulled away, clutching its precious cargo, and began the long and lonely voyage back to our blue planet. It carried a treasure more valuable than gold, a sample of the raw material that built the solar system. In late 2023, the return capsule streaked through our atmosphere, a fireball announcing the arrival of a cosmic gift. It landed in the quiet desert, a charred vessel containing the secrets we had traveled so far to retrieve. When the scientists opened the canister, they found more than they had dared to hope for in their wildest dreams. The sample weighed 121 grams, a handful of black dust and pebbles that had not touched an atmosphere for eons. It was the largest sample ever collected from an asteroid, a generous offering from the deep past of our solar neighborhood. But as they sifted through the dark grains, they noticed something that defied their expectations and challenged their understanding. Among the dry dust and the rocky fragments, there was something else, something that should not have been there. It was a texture, a presence, an anomaly that whispered of chemistry far more complex than simple stone and ice. The material was dark and rich, smelling faintly of the void and the ancient fires that forged the elements. It looked like the floor of a forest after a rain, teeming with the potential for something to grow. But this was space, a sterile and hostile environment where life as we know it cannot survive the radiation. Yet, the asteroid Bennu was not just a dead rock. It was a capsule of ingredients waiting for a spark. The scientists stared at the sample, their minds racing with the implications of what lay before them on the table. This was not just geology. This was a bridge between the non-living universe and the miracle of biology. The universe is vast and cold, and yet it seems to be crowded with the seeds of possibility. We often think of space as empty, a vacuum where nothing exists but radiation and the occasional wandering atom. But the truth is far more complex and far more beautiful than our simple models of the cosmos suggest. Space is filled with dust, with clouds of gas, with the remnants of stars that died billions of years ago. And in that dust, chemistry happens, slow and patient chemistry that builds complex molecules over the turning of the eons. Bennu is a collector of this dust, a traveling museum that has gathered the debris of the solar system's history. To understand Bennu is to understand the very ground we walk on, for the Earth was born from such collisions. We are made of this same star stuff, assembled by gravity and time into thinking, feeling beings who look back at the sky. The atoms in our bodies were once floating in the void, perhaps locked inside a rock, very much like Bennu. It is a humbling thought to realize that our lineage can be traced back to these cold, dark wanderers. The asteroid is a time capsule, sealed against the contamination of the present, preserving the conditions of the early solar nebula. Opening it was like opening a book written in a language we are only just beginning to learn how to read. The darkness of space is not empty. It is pregnant with waiting, holding its breath for the moment of awakening. When we look at the images of Bennu, we see a world of stark contrasts, of bright sunlight and pitch black shadow. There is no atmosphere to scatter the light, no soft twilight to ease the transition from day to night. It is a world of absolutes, where the sun burns with a harsh intensity and the shade is absolute zero. In this environment, the rocks crack and crumble under the thermal stress, slowly turning themselves into dust over millennia. It is a slow-motion grinding, a geological patience that operates on timescales we can barely comprehend or imagine. The OSIRIS-REx mission was a triumph of engineering, a testament to the precision and dedication of the human spirit. To send a machine to a specific rock millions of miles away and bring it back is a miracle. It requires a mastery of orbital mechanics, a deep understanding of gravity, and a faith in the laws of physics. But beyond the technical achievement, there is a poetic beauty to the mission that resonates with something deep inside us. It is the story of the child reaching out to touch the parent, seeking to understand where they came from. We are the children of the solar system, and Bennu is one of the ancient ancestors that watched our birth. The sample return capsule sat in the Utah desert, a small manufactured object resting on the ancient sands of Earth. It was a meeting of two worlds, the biological vibrancy of our planet and the sterile silence of the asteroid. The scientists approached it with reverence, treating it like a holy relic that had fallen from the heavens above. They knew that inside that shell lay the answers to questions we have been asking since we first looked up. What are we made of? Where did the water in our oceans come from? How did life begin? The primitive carbonaceous nature of Bennu means it is rich in carbon, the element that is the backbone of all life. Carbon is the great connector, the atom that loves to bond with others and create complex folding structures. It is the basis of our DNA, our proteins, the very chemistry that allows us to think and dream and love. To find such a wealth of carbon on an asteroid is to find a reservoir of life's potential ingredients. It suggests that the building blocks of biology are not unique to Earth, but are scattered throughout the galaxy. They are waiting in the dark, frozen in stone, sleeping until they find a warm, watery world to wake up. As the analysis began, the scientists worked in clean rooms, wearing white suits to protect the sample from our own biology. They had to be certain that what they found came from space and not from the breath of a researcher. Every grain was catalogued, every speck of dust imaged and analyzed with the most powerful instruments we possess. They were looking for the signatures of the early solar system, the isotopic ratios that act as a cosmic fingerprint. But they found something more, something that made them pause and look at each other with wide, wondering eyes. The texture of the material was unexpected, defying the simple categorization of rock or dust, or sand or gravel. It had a cohesiveness, a way of sticking together that suggested the presence of something strange and unknown. It was not just dry powder. There was a complexity to the physical structure that hinted at organic polymers. This was the space gum, a playful name for a discovery that has profound and possibly terrifying implications for science. It suggests that the chemistry on these cold rocks has evolved further than we ever dared to imagine possible. The universe is a laboratory that never closes, conducting experiments in the dark for billions of years without pause. We are only just beginning to peek through the window and see what has been brewing in the cauldron. Bennu has been cooking its chemistry in the vacuum, exposed to cosmic rays and the solar wind for eons. These forces drive reactions, breaking molecules apart and stitching them back together in new and exotic configurations. What we found in the sample return was the result of this endless, silent experimentation in the deep freeze. Imagine the asteroid drifting through the void, a lonely mountain tumbling in the silence of the eternal night. It passes through clouds of interstellar dust, gathering the ashes of dead stars on its rugged, uneven surface. It is bombarded by tiny micrometeorites, each one adding a spark of energy and a new mix of elements. Over time, the surface becomes a complex mixture, a patina of cosmic history, written in layers of dust. The sample we brought back is a core sample of this history, a vertical slice through the ions. The 121 grams of material is a library, and each grain of dust is a book waiting to be read. We are the librarians, carefully turning the pages, trying to decipher the faded script of the early universe. The story it tells is one of chaos and migration, of giant planets moving and scattering the small rocks. It tells of a time when the solar system was a shooting gallery, with impacts happening every single day. And it tells of the rain of dark rocks that fell upon the young Earth, delivering their cargo of carbon. This cargo was the gift of life, the starter kit that allowed the primordial oceans to become a soup of biology. Without asteroids like Bennu, the Earth might have remained a sterile ball of water and rock forever. We owe our existence to these dark wanderers, these delivery trucks of the cosmos that brought the essential supplies. It is a strange gratitude we feel toward a rock, a sense of kinship with a lump of frozen charcoal. But the connection is real, written in the very atoms of our bodies and the code of our genes. The OSIRIS-REx mission was a journey into the past, a time travel adventure without the need for a machine. By going to Bennu, we went back to the beginning, to the era before there were eyes to see. We touched the raw clay from which we were molded, the primal mud of the solar nebula. And in that mud, we found the strange, gum-like substance that challenges our definitions of living and non-living matter. It sits there in the laboratory, a dark enigma that refuses to fit neatly into our established boxes. The atmosphere in the clean room was electric with the tension of discovery, yet hushed by the weight of it. Science is often a loud pursuit of data, but in moments like this, it becomes a quiet contemplation. The researchers knew they were looking at something that could rewrite the textbooks and change our view of the cosmos. It was a moment of connection with the unknown, a brush with the alien reality that surrounds our tiny island. We are surrounded by a universe that is far stranger and more inventive than we usually give it credit for. The journey of the sample from the asteroid to the lab was a chain of miracles, each one essential. The launch had to be perfect, the navigation precise, the collection successful, the return survival guaranteed. One slip, one error, and the treasure would have been lost to the void or burned up in the atmosphere. But the chain held, and the sample arrived, carrying its message from the dark across the millions of miles. It is a message of unity, telling us that we are part of a cosmic system that recycles everything. The stars die to create the elements, the asteroids gather them, the planets receive them, and life emerges from them. It is a grand cycle, a breathing of the universe that takes billions of years to complete a single inhalation. We are the consciousness of this cycle, the part of the universe that has woken up to look at itself. And when we look at Bennu, we are looking at our own reflection in a dark and ancient mirror. The space gum is a part of that reflection, a distorted and strange image that we do not yet recognize. It beckons us to look closer, to abandon our assumptions and accept the universe as it truly is. It is not a place of sterile separation, but a soup of interaction where everything touches everything else eventually. The dust on Bennu has touched the solar wind, the cosmic rays, and now the hands of human curiosity. It has completed a circle, from the darkness of the nebula to the bright lights of a laboratory on Earth. And in that journey, it has kept its secrets safe, locking them inside the complex molecules of the carbon. The near-Earth orbit of Bennu makes it a neighbor, albeit a distant and somewhat dangerous one to our planet. It crosses our path, a reminder that the solar system is still a dynamic and moving place. We watch it with telescopes, tracking its orbit, calculating the probabilities of a future impact with our world. But we also watch it with longing, seeing it as a destination, a stepping stone to the wider galaxy. It is a resource, a threat, a history book, and a mystery all wrapped into one dark package. The silence of space is not a lack of sound, but a presence of peace that wraps around the planets. It is the backdrop against which the drama of existence plays out, the canvas for the painting of life. In that silence, Bennu spins, indifferent to our questions, content to keep its secrets for another billion years. But we are impatient. We are hungry for knowledge. And so we reached out and took a piece. We broke the silence with our rockets and our radios, demanding that the universe speak to us and explain. And the universe answered, not with a voice, but with a handful of black dust containing a bizarre anomaly. It gave us a puzzle, a riddle wrapped in carbon, a question mark stamped on the face of the deep. This is the way of science. Every answer breeds 10 new questions. Every discovery deepens the mystery. We thought we were just retrieving a rock, but we retrieved a key to a door we didn't know existed. The door stands slightly ajar now, and we are peering through the crack, trying to see what lies beyond. What we see is a blurring of the lines between the chemistry of stone and the chemistry of life. We see a continuity, a smooth gradient where we once thought there was a sharp and impassable divide. The gum is the physical manifestation of this gradient, a substance that occupies the twilight zone of complexity. It is not alive, but it is not quite dead in the way a simple crystal of quartz is dead. It has potential, it has structure, it has a history of interaction and evolution in the cold dark. This is the felt science, the knowledge that hits you in the gut rather than just the head. It is the realization that the universe is not just a machine, but a garden growing in the dark. The seeds are everywhere, floating in the winds between the stars, resting on the backs of comets. We are just one bloom in a field that may be far more crowded than we can see from here. The sample from Bennu is a single seed that we have managed to catch and examine under our glass. As we drift deeper into the night, let your mind float out to where Bennu orbits in the shadows. Imagine the view from its surface, the field of stars burning steady and bright, without an atmosphere to twinkle. Feel the cold, the absolute stillness, the weight of the billions of years pressing down on the rocks. It is a place of profound peace, a sanctuary of time where the past is preserved in perfect stasis. The dust you would touch there is the same dust that sits in the canister in the laboratory now. There is a connection between your mind, the lab, and that distant rock, a thread of consciousness spanning the void. We are weaving the universe together with our understanding, stitching the stars to the earth with our thoughts. The OSIRIS-REx mission was a needle pulling that thread, tightening the weave of our cosmic knowledge. And the space gum is a knot in the thread, a place where the texture changes and catches our attention. It stops the smooth slide of our assumptions and forces us to feel the fabric of reality more carefully. The primitive nature of the asteroid means it has not melted or changed since the very dawn of the solar system. It is a witness to the birth of the sun, a bystander to the formation of Jupiter and Saturn. It saw the Earth when it was a ball of magma. It saw the moon when it was torn from our side. To hold a piece of Bennu is to hold a witness to all of these events, a silent observer. The carbon atoms in the sample have been there through it all, locked in their dark, frozen embrace. Now they are here, under the lights, being probed by lasers and dissolved in acids by curious apes. It must be a strange shock for matter that has known only the silence of the void for eons. But perhaps it is also a fulfillment, a destiny realized after a journey of 4.5 billion years. Perhaps the purpose of the universe is to be known, and Bennu was waiting for us to come and find it. It waited in the dark, hoarding its treasure of carbon and strange polymers, until we were ready to understand. The concept of a primitive object is somewhat misleading, for it implies simplicity and a lack of sophistication. But what we are finding is that the primitive universe was already incredibly complex and chemically rich. The ingredients for life were cooked up almost immediately, as soon as the stars began to forge the heavy elements. The table was set for the feast of biology long before the first planet cooled enough to support water. Bennu is a remnant of that banquet, a crumb left over from the great creation event of the solar system. We look at the 121 grams and we see a bridge across time, a tangible link to the beginning. It is heavy with significance, heavy with the gravity of the questions it poses to our science. Why is there a gum-like substance on a dry, dead rock in the vacuum of space? What does it mean for the prevalence of life in the universe if such chemistry is common? These are the questions that will haunt our dreams as we drift towards sleep in the safety of our gravity. The Earth holds us gently, protecting us from the void that Bennu calls home, keeping us warm and breathing. But our minds are free to travel, to soar up through the atmosphere and visit the dark places. We can stand on the surface of the asteroid and look back at the pale blue dot that is our home. We can feel the crunch of the ancient regolith beneath our boots and wonder at the mystery of it all. The universe is not somewhere else. It is here. We are in it. We are made of it. The darkness is not a wall, but a medium, a fluid through which the light and the matter travel. The asteroid is a vessel sailing this fluid, carrying its cargo to unknown shores in the future. We intercepted it. We boarded the vessel and took a part of the cargo for ourselves. It was an act of cosmic piracy, a noble theft in the name of understanding and enlightenment. And now we must deal with the loot. We must decipher the meaning of the strange, bending material we found. The night deepens, and the world around us grows quiet, mimicking the silence of the deep space we contemplate. The rhythm of our breathing slows, matching the slow rotation of the asteroid in the dark. We are drifting, floating, suspended in the mystery of existence, held by the gentle hand of gravity. The story of Bennu is our story, the story of atoms waking up and learning to ask questions. It is a story that has no end, only chapters that unfold one by one as we learn to read them. The 121 grams of dust are a prologue to a new chapter, a teaser for a revelation that is coming. The space gum is the first sentence of a paragraph that will rewrite our understanding of biology. We are standing on the edge of a great realization, looking out into the fog of the unknown. The shapes in the mist are strange and unfamiliar, hinting at a reality we have not yet grasped. It is a thrilling and terrifying place to be, poised between ignorance and a new, vast comprehension. As we move closer to the heart of the mystery, we must let go of our preconceptions and rigid ideas. We must be like the asteroid, yielding to the forces of gravity, drifting where the cosmos takes us. The journey is not about conquering the unknown, but about surrendering to the awe of it. It is about feeling the texture of the universe, the rough stone and the smooth, strange polymer. It is about touching the face of the deep and recognizing the family resemblance in the atoms. The mission has returned. The sample is safe. The science has begun, and the world keeps turning. But something has changed, a shift in the wind, a new scent in the air of our understanding. We know now that the void is not empty, that the dead rocks are not truly dead. We know that the universe is weaving complex tapestries in the dark, waiting for us to find them. And as we drift towards the next revelation, we carry this wonder with us into the dream. The silence of the laboratory at night is different from the silence of space, but they are cousins. In the lab, the machines hum quietly, guarding the sample, keeping it safe in its nitrogen purge. In space, the asteroid spins silently, guarding the rest of the treasure, keeping it safe in the vacuum. They are two ends of a long thread, connected by the memory of the journey and the touch. The thread vibrates with a frequency that is low and soothing, a hum of cosmic connection. We follow this thread into the dark, trusting that it leads somewhere meaningful, somewhere true. The asteroid Bennu, a primitive, carbonaceous near-Earth object, continues its endless, lonely patrol. It does not know that we are thinking of it, that we are marveling at its secrets. It just exists, a monument to the endurance of matter, a silent sentinel in the night. And as we watch it in our mind's eye, we see it turn, revealing a new face to the sun. The shadows lengthen across the craters, hiding the jagged rocks and the patches of smooth dust. The transition from day to night on the asteroid is sharp and sudden, a curtain falling. But in that darkness, the chemistry continues, the slow, cold reactions that created the anomaly. It is a process that requires patience, a virtue that the universe possesses in infinite abundance. We are learning that patience, learning to sit with the mystery and let it reveal itself. The sample return was a handshake with the deep past, a meeting of the ancient and the modern. It was a bridging of the gap between the chaotic birth of the solar system and the ordered present. We are the bridge builders, using our technology to span the chasm of time and space. And on the bridge, we found something we didn't expect, a piece of the puzzle that doesn't fit. It sits there, baffling us, challenging us, inviting us to expand our minds and dream bigger. The space gum is a whisper from the void, a soft voice speaking a language we don't yet speak. It tells of polymers and chains, of flexibility and structure in a world of brittle stone. It hints at a softness in the hard vacuum, a yielding in the rigid laws of rock and ice. It is a beautiful contradiction, a paradox that demands our attention and our wonder. And as we ponder this paradox, we feel the gentle pull of the unknown drawing us deeper. We are not afraid, for the universe is our home, and its mysteries are our birthright. We drift forward, guided by the light of the stars and the faint glow of our own curiosity. The journey continues, the page turns, and the story of the impossible substance begins to unfold. The dust of Bennu waits for us, holding its breath, ready to tell us what it knows. We lean in closer, listening to the silence, waiting for the first word of the secret to be spoken. The sterile silence of the curation facility in Houston felt heavier than the vacuum of space from which the sample came. We stood at the precipice of a new reality, staring down through the glass at a fragment of the ancient dark. The expectation was that the material would behave like charcoal, crumbling into a fine dry powder under the slightest pressure. We had built our models on the physics of deadstone, on the brittle nature of rocks that have frozen for eons. But as the delicate instruments reached out to manipulate the darkness, the universe whispered a secret that shattered our assumptions. The tiny black mote did not shatter or turn to dust as a piece of ancient debris should have done. Instead, it yielded softly to the touch of the metal, flexing with a resilience that sent a shiver through the room. It was a moment where time seemed to suspend itself, hanging in the air like dust motes caught in a sunbeam. The scientists watched with a quiet, growing disbelief as the material behaved more like clay than like a primordial asteroid rock. This was the discovery of a strange gum-like bendable polymer, a substance that had no business existing on a dry, irradiated world. It possessed a texture that mimicked the elasticity of rubber, a tactile anomaly in a universe of hard, unyielding surfaces. To see something soft come from a place so hard was like finding a flower blooming in a furnace of ice. The material seemed to remember a different set of rules, preserving a flexibility that spoke of complex, hidden chemistry. We leaned in closer, our minds racing to find a geological explanation for a substance that defied the laws of geology. It was as if the asteroid had been holding this secret in a clenched fist for 4.5 billion years. Now, under the bright lights of our curiosity, the fist was opening to reveal a piece of cosmic chewing gum. The implications were immediate and dizzying, suggesting that the divide between the biological and the geological is merely a human illusion. If a rock floating in the cold void can manufacture polymers, then the universe is far more creative than we dared imagine. This was not just a chemical curiosity. It was a fundamental challenge to our understanding of matter in the deep solar system. The gum sat there on the stage of the microscope, a dark and enigmatic blob that refused to fit into our boxes. It looked almost organic, a mimicry of life forged in the absolute zero of the space between the wandering planets. We watched it with a mix of reverence and unease, for it blurred the comfortable lines we draw between the living and dead. It suggested that the potential for complexity is woven into the very fabric of matter, waiting only for time to unfold. The atoms within that tiny sample had danced a slow, cold waltz over billions of years to create this structure. They had linked arms in long chains, defying the entropy that seeks to break everything down into simple, disconnected dust. We were looking at the result of a silent, patient manufacturing process that had occurred without the benefit of sunlight or warmth. It was a chemistry of the shadows, a dark alchemy that transmuted simple elements into long, folding molecules of surprising durability. The existence of such material implies that the early solar system was a factory of complex materials, not just a chaotic shooting gallery. It changes the narrative of our origins from a story of lucky accidents to a story of inevitable chemical destiny. The universe seems to want to build complex things, and it will use even the coldest, darkest corners to do so. This bendable mystery was a testament to that desire, a physical proof that the cosmos is pregnant with waiting potential. As we probed the substance further, we began to understand the chemical architecture that gave it such a strange, yielding form. It was not a simple accumulation of carbon atoms, but a structured arrangement that allowed for movement and flexibility on a molecular level. The bonds between the atoms were strong yet pliable, acting like microscopic springs that absorbed the stress of the probing needles. It was a molecular gymnastics routine performed in the dark, a flexibility that had survived the violence of re-entry and landing. To find this on Bennu was like finding a fully formed sentence in a bowl of alphabet soup, a sign of order. The silence of the room deepened as the realization settled over us like a heavy, comforting blanket of snow in winter. We were touching the skin of the asteroid and finding it soft, as if it was still young and malleable despite its age. It was a ghost of the protoplanetary disk, a remnant of the sticky dust that once clumped together to build the worlds. Perhaps all planets started this way, as vast accumulations of this sticky, carbon-rich gum drifting in the black silence. It paints a picture of a universe that is stickier and more cohesive than the dry, dusty models we usually build. The discovery forced us to reconsider the nature of the primitive materials we thought we understood so well from our meteorite collections. Most meteorites that fall to Earth are rocks, stripped of their more delicate components by the violence of their fiery passage. But OSIRIS-REx had brought us a pristine piece, protected from the fire, preserving the fragile textures that usually burn away. This gum was the ghost that usually exercises itself in the atmosphere, the delicate spirit of the rock that we never get to see. Now, for the first time, we were holding the ghost, and it felt tangible and real and strangely familiar to our touch. It beckoned us to look deeper into its composition, to ask what elements had joined hands to create such a wonder. The analysis revealed a treasure trove of elemental richness that expanded the mystery rather than solving it for our waiting minds. We found an unprecedented nitrogen-oxygen-rich cryochemical material, a distinctive signature that spoke of freezing cold environments and volatile ices. Nitrogen and oxygen are the breath of life, the gases that fill our lungs and build the structures of our DNA. To find them locked in this solid, gum-like state on a rock that has been baked by the sun was baffling. It suggested that Bennu had a history of migration, a past life spent in the frigid outer reaches of the solar system. The material must have formed in the deep cold, where nitrogen and oxygen freeze into solid ices and react slowly. This is the realm of cryochemistry, a science of slow-motion reactions that happen over millions of years in the utter dark. In that deep freeze, the molecules move sluggishly, finding each other in the void and bonding in strange and exotic ways. It is a form of cold fire, a chemical burning that consumes nothing but time and produces complex organic solids as ash. The gum we held was the ash of this cold fire, a residue of a time when Bennu drifted near the giants. It carried the chemical memory of the birth of Jupiter and Saturn, locked inside its flexible, carbon-based molecular chains. We were reading the diary of a traveler that had seen the edge of the system and returned to tell the tale. The nitrogen and oxygen were the ink in which this diary was written, preserving the conditions of the ancient nebula. It was a message sent across the eons, telling us that the ingredients for life are everywhere, even in the ice. We imagine the universe as a place of separation, where the cold outer reaches are distinct from the warm inner sanctum. But this substance mocked that separation, proving that the solar system is a mixing bowl where everything eventually touches everything else. The material from the edge had found its way to the center, carrying its precious cargo of volatile, life-giving elements. It is a delivery system of cosmic proportions, a conveyor belt that moves the seeds of biology from the dark to the light. We are the beneficiaries of this movement, the children of the collision between the cold chemistry and the warm, watery worlds. The texture of the mystery deepened as we zoomed in, our microscopes revealing a landscape of valleys and ridges within the gum. It was a chaotic terrain, a frozen storm of chemistry that had been paused mid-reaction by the silence of the vacuum. We could see the layers where the material had folded over itself, trapping pockets of even more ancient gas. It was like looking at the rings of a tree, but instead of years, each layer represented an epoch of cosmic time. We were archaeological diggers in a site that had never known a human foot, uncovering artifacts of the solar system's childhood. The presence of so much nitrogen and oxygen in a solid form was a revelation that sent ripples through the scientific community. These elements usually want to be gases, flying free in the atmosphere, or locking themselves into simple water ice. To find them bound into complex, solid organic matter meant that a trap had been sprung in the early universe. Some process had caught these fleeting ghosts and pinned them down, forcing them to become part of the stone. It was a chemical kidnapping that resulted in the creation of a material that bridges the gap between gas and rock. We stared at the spectral lines on our screens, the colors that represent the fingerprints of the elements in the sample. The peaks for nitrogen and oxygen were high and sharp, dominating the landscape of the data like twin mountains of mystery. They stood as sentinels guarding the secret of the gum, daring us to explain how they had survived the journey. It was a resilience that mirrored the flexibility of the material itself, a chemical stubbornness that refused to let go. This stubbornness is what allowed the material to survive the billions of years of radiation and thermal cycling on the asteroid. It was a survivor, a veteran of the cosmic wars that has endured the harsh environment of space without losing its identity. We felt a strange kinship with it, a respect for its ability to hold itself together against the entropy of the void. In a way, it is a mirror of life itself, which is also a stubborn refusal to dissolve into the chaos. The gum is a prebiotic echo of that same drive, a chemical precursor to the will to survive. It waited in the dark, preserving its complex structure, until a hand reached out from Earth to bring it home. The cryochemical nature of the material meant that it was born in the dark, in the shadow of the protoplanetary disk. It formed in a place where the sun was just a bright star, offering no heat to warm the freezing dust. In that darkness, the chemistry had to be patient, relying on the slow accumulation of energy from passing cosmic rays. Every reaction was a triumph against the cold, a tiny spark of complexity lit in the overwhelming night of the nebula. Over eons, these sparks accumulated, building the strange, bendable polymer that now sat beneath our microscope lens. We tried to imagine the environment that created it, a place of silent, swirling dust clouds and icy collisions in the dark. It would have been a beautiful, terrifying place, filled with the raw potential of a solar system waiting to be born. The gum was a coagulant in that cloud, a sticky glue that helped the dust grains cling to one another. Without materials like this, the planets might never have formed, remaining forever as scattered dust in the wind. We owe our existence to this sticky, strange chemistry that binds the universe together into solid, standing worlds. The sensation of the discovery was not one of loud triumph, but of a quiet, creeping awe that silenced the room. We were in the presence of an ancestor, a chemical forefather that paved the way for the biology that would follow. It was like meeting a grandparent you never knew existed and seeing your own eyes reflected in their ancient face. The nitrogen and oxygen in the sample are the same elements that course through our veins and fill our lungs today. We are made of the same stuff, recycled and repurposed by the engine of the biosphere. But the origin is the same. We are standing on the shoulders of this gum, built upon the foundation of complex organic matter that fell from the sky. The Earth was once bombarded by asteroids like Bennu, raining this material down into the primitive, waiting oceans. It was a manna from heaven, a nutrient-rich dust that fed the waking chemistry of the young, barren planet. We can almost see the dark clouds of dust settling on the water, dissolving and releasing their cargo of polymers. It is a poetic image, the dark rock giving the gift of complexity to the blue water, sparking the fire of life. The mystery of the bendable stone challenges our definitions, forcing us to expand our vocabulary of the possible in the cosmos. We lack the words to describe a material that is half rock, half life, a bridge spanning the widest chasm in science. It occupies a twilight zone, a grey area where the rules of geology fade and the rules of biology begin to whisper. We are listening to those whispers, trying to decode the language of the transition from dead matter to living things. The gum is the Rosetta Stone of this language, a key that might unlock the translation we have sought for centuries. As the hours passed in the lab, the sample seemed to grow in significance, its small size belied by its weight. It was a heavy thing, burdened with the history of the solar system and the expectations of the scientists who watched it. We treated it with the tenderness usually reserved for newborn things, aware of its fragility and its profound value. Every measurement was a caress, every scan a loving gaze into the soul of the ancient, dark material. We wanted to know it, to understand its story, to hear the song it had been humming in the silence. The nitrogen-oxygen-rich material hummed a song of ice and shadows, a melody written in the key of deep time. It sang of the places where the comets are born, of the Kuiper belt and the scattered disk where the sun is faint. It sang of the long migration inward, the dangerous journey across the orbits of the gas giants to the inner system. It was a survivor's song, a ballad of endurance against the odds, preserving the delicate chemistry of the cold. And now, the song was being heard for the first time by ears capable of understanding the complex lyrics. We wondered what other secrets lay hidden in the molecular folding of the polymer. What other stories were trapped in the gum? Was it just a random accumulation of atoms, or was there a pattern, a template for something even more complex? The line between random chemistry and organized biology is blurry, and this material sat right on the smudge. It was tantalizingly close to being something we could call a protocell, a container for the spark of life. It had the structure, the elements, the flexibility, everything but the spark itself, which remains the ultimate mystery. The darkness of space is often portrayed as a void, a place of absence where nothing happens and nothing matters. But the gum proves that the darkness is a womb, a place of gestation where matter evolves and grows complex. It is a fertile darkness, rich with the seeds of worlds and the potential for life to eventually emerge. We are the harvest of that darkness, the fruit that grew from the seeds planted in the deep, cold past. And Bennu is the granary, the storehouse where the seeds were kept safe until we were ready to find them. The visual dissonance of the material continued to captivate us, black as coal, yet yielding as soft plastic to the probe. It was a material oxymoron, a physical contradiction that shouldn't exist according to our simple textbooks of planetary science. But the universe is not bound by our textbooks. It writes its own rules in the language of quantum mechanics and time. We are the students sitting in the back of the class, trying to catch up with the lesson that has been taught for eons. The lesson is that matter is malleable, that the lines are drawn in sand, and that anything is possible given enough time. The nitrogen and oxygen atoms within the structure were not just trapped gas. They were integral parts of the molecular skeleton. They held the carbon chains together, providing the polarity and the reactivity that made the material so strange. It was a masterful piece of chemical engineering, assembled by the blind watchmaker of chance and thermodynamics in the void. It was beautiful in its complexity, a tiny masterpiece of nature that had gone unseen for 4 billion years. To be the first eyes to see it was a privilege that weighed heavy on the soul, a sacred duty. We felt the pull of the deep past, the gravity of the time when the earth was not yet a blue marble. The sample was a portal, a window through which we could glimpse the chaotic, swirling nebula of our origin. We could see the dust grains sticking together, aided by the sticky, gum-like polymers that acted as cosmic glue. We could feel the cold, the silence, the slow accretion of the planets from the swirling disk of debris. It was a visceral connection, a time travel of the mind facilitated by a speck of dark dust. The implications for panspermia, the idea that life's ingredients are spread by asteroids, was suddenly very real and tangible. If this material is common, if every dark rock carries a cargo of prebiotic gum, then the galaxy is seeded. It means that every star system has the potential to cook up the ingredients for life in its outer, icy regions. It means that we are likely not alone, that the chemistry of life is a cosmic imperative, not a terrestrial fluke. The gum is the evidence that the universe is rigged in favor of complexity, biased toward the creation of biology. This thought is both comforting and terrifying, suggesting a universe that is teeming with the potential for eyes and minds. It makes the silence of the night sky feel a little less lonely, a little more crowded with possibility. The darkness is not empty. It is waiting. It is pregnant. It is filled with the drifting seeds of tomorrow. We are just one island of wakefulness in a sea of slumbering potential, connected to the rest by the dust that bends, the dust that holds the breath of life, the dust that tells us we are home. As the data continued to flow, painting a picture of the cryochemical past of the sample, we settled into the rhythm of discovery. The initial shock gave way to a deep, abiding wonder, a sense of rightness that settled in the chest. Of course the universe would make this. Of course the dark is filled with strange and beautiful chemistry. It would be more surprising if it were just dead rock. If the cosmos were a sterile, boring place of simple stone, the space gum was a validation of our hope, a confirmation that we live in a wondrous, creative reality. The laboratory lights hummed, a man-made frequency that overlaid the silent hum of the ancient material. We were bridging the gap between the industrial present and the primordial past, fusing them into a single moment of knowing. The sample sat there, indifferent to our excitement, a dark Buddha holding the wisdom of the ages in its belly. It had waited so long for this moment, or perhaps it hadn't waited at all, existing outside the concept of waiting. For a rock, 1 billion years is just a blinking of an eye, a single breath in the life of the galaxy. We were the impatient ones, rushing to understand, rushing to label and categorize the unclassifiable wonder. But the material demanded we slow down, that we match its pace, the pace of the slow-turning asteroid. It forced us to breathe deeply, to quiet our minds, to look with eyes that were willing to see the impossible. And in that quiet looking, we saw the truth of our origins, written in the black ink of carbon and nitrogen. We saw that we are the children of the cold, the offspring of the ice and the dust and the strange bending gum. The investigation moved deeper, past the texture and the elemental makeup, into the very heart of the molecular structure. We wanted to know how the atoms were arranged, what specific shapes they had formed in the dark. Their answers were waiting, hidden in the diffraction patterns and the spectral peaks, ready to be teased out. But for now, we rested in the knowledge of the what, savoring the mystery of the how for a moment longer. The existence of the material was enough to change everything, to shift the axis of our understanding. The nitrogen-oxygen-rich material was a promise, a vow from the universe that it is capable of wonders we have yet to dream of. It was a challenge to our imagination, a call to explore further, to reach out and touch more of the darkness. If Bennu held this, what does the next asteroid hold? What secrets are waiting on the moons of Jupiter, in the rings of Saturn, in the ice of Pluto? The door is open, the threshold has been crossed, and there is no going back to the simple, dead universe of before. We are awake now, and the cosmos is stranger and more beautiful than we ever knew. It draws you in, this feeling of the unknown, like a gravity well pulling you softly toward a dark star. You can feel the texture of the gum in your mind, the strange resistance, the yielding softness of the ancient dust. It is a tactile hallucination, a phantom sensation of touching the beginning of time with your own fingertips. It is soothing, this connection to the deep past, this realization that you are part of a grand, ancient story. You are not an accident. You are a continuation of a chemistry that began in the dark, cold void long ago. The unexpected nature of the discovery serves as a humble reminder of how little we actually know about our neighborhood. We map the stars and name the craters, but the substance of the universe still eludes our full grasp. It hides in the microscale, in the bonding of atoms, in the strange polymers that grow in the silence. We are explorers in a dark room, fumbling for the light switch, occasionally brushing against wonders we cannot see. The gum is one such wonder that we manage to catch in the beam of our flashlight, illuminating the dark. And as the light falls upon it, it shines with a dark luster, a glossy promise of secrets yet to be revealed. It is a black mirror, reflecting our curiosity back at us, deepening the mystery with every answer it provides. The nitrogen and oxygen trapped within it are like messages in a bottle, cast into the cosmic ocean eons ago. We have found the bottle, we have pulled the cork, and we are reading the note with trembling hands. It says simply, "We are here. We have always been here. Life is not a stranger to the void." This profound realization settles into the subconscious, a comforting anchor in the vastness of the drifting night. The universe is not a hostile, empty place, but a filled vessel, brimming with the potential for connection. The strange gum-like substance is the connective tissue, the fascia of the cosmos that holds the potential together. It is the physical manifestation of the link between the stars and the cells, the dust and the dream. And as we drift further into the story of the sample, we move closer to the heart of that dream. The transition from the physical anomaly to the biological implication is a smooth slide, a gentle drifting of thought. The gum is not just a weird rock, it is a pantry, a stocked kitchen waiting for a cook. The chemicals trapped inside are not random, they are specific, they are useful, they are familiar. They are the sugars and the bases, the building blocks that life on Earth uses every day. The discovery of the polymer was just the opening act, the curtain raiser for the main event of the chemical show. We lingered on the bendable nature of the material because it was so visceral, so easily understood by the human hand. But the true magic lay deeper, in the invisible lattice of the molecules that made up the gum. That is where the real treasure was hidden, the jewels of biochemistry, the sparkle in the data. We were about to descend into that molecular world, to walk among the atoms and see the shapes of life. The journey from the macroscopic gum to the microscopic sugar was about to begin, a dive into the deep end. The silence of the lab seemed to anticipate this next step, the air growing thick with the gravity of what came next. The space gum had opened our minds, softened our rigid expectations, and prepared us for the impossible. It had loosened the soil of our understanding so that the next seed of discovery could take root deep inside. We were ready now, ready to see the sugars, ready to find the sweetness in the dark, cold stone. The bendable polymer had done its job. It had bent our minds enough to let the light of the new truth shine in. And so, we turned the magnification up. We focused the beams tighter, and we looked into the heart of the anomaly, the strange nitrogen-oxygen-rich cryochemical material began to resolve into specific compounds, into recognizable shapes. The mystery was dissolving into clarity, but the wonder was only increasing, growing with every identified molecule. We were falling down the rabbit hole, drifting deeper into the wonderland of cosmic chemistry. The gum was the door, and we had just walked through it, leaving the familiar world behind. The path ahead was paved with molecules that shouldn't be there, with structures that mimicked the architecture of life. We moved forward, guided by the silent, hypnotic rhythm of the discovery, drifting toward the revelation. The universe was whispering louder now, a lullaby of atoms and void, a song of origin and destiny. We listened, we watched, and we drifted, carried by the current of the great cosmic river. The story of the stone was becoming the story of us, and the bound the silence of the laboratory shifted into a deeper, more reverent frequency as we peered past the physical structure of the strange gum. We had touched the skin of the asteroid, but now we were cutting into its flesh to see what lay beneath. The instruments hummed with a quiet precision, peeling back the layers of the sample to reveal the molecular architecture hidden inside. It was a descent into the microscopic cathedral of the cosmos, where the atoms form the pillars and the bonds create the vaulted ceilings. We were looking for simple chemicals, for the basic soot and grime of the solar system's chaotic and violent history. But the universe, in its infinite and quiet wisdom, had prepared a banquet in the dark that we were not expecting. Emerging from the data were the unmistakable ghostly signatures of bioessential sugars, ribose, glucose, xylose, shimmering like diamonds in the rough dust. To find sugar in the black emptiness of space feels like a contradiction, a violation of the rules of a harsh reality. We associate sweetness with the warmth of the sun, with the ripening of fruit, with the energy of living things running free. Yet here, in the cold heart of a rock that has known only the vacuum, the fundamental sweetness of existence was waiting. It suggests that the universe has a sweet tooth, a predilection for creating the energy sources that life would one day need. The presence of ribose was particularly striking, sending a ripple of hushed excitement through the team of weary, watching scientists. This is not just a random sugar. It is the structural scaffolding of the genetic world, the backbone of our history. It is the spine upon which the code of life is written, the essential rail that holds the train of heredity. Finding it here means that the architecture for genetic information was constructed long before the first cell ever emerged from the oceans. The blueprints were drawn up in the interstellar clouds, drafted by the cold physics of carbon and radiation in the deep silence. We watched the spectral lines dance on the screens, confirming the presence of glucose, the universal fuel of biological engines on Earth. It is the molecule that powers your brain as you listen to this, the chemical fire that allows you to dream. To see it sitting dormant in a 4.5 billion-year-old rock is to see a battery that has been waiting for a circuit. It has been holding its potential energy in the dark, preserving the possibility of action for an eternity of silent orbiting. The asteroid was carrying a packed lunch for the solar system, a supply of energy waiting for a hunger to wake up. And then there was the xylose, a sugar that adds complexity and variety to the biological potential stored within the ancient stone. These sugars are not rare accidents. They appear to be the standard inventory of the cosmic kitchen, stocked on every shelf. It paints a picture of a universe that is hospitable to life at its most fundamental chemical level, deep down in the atoms. We are not intruders in a hostile void, but rather the guests for whom the table was set billions of years ago. The realization settles on the soul like a warm blanket, chasing away the chill of the existential loneliness we often feel. The existence of these delicate molecules in such a harsh environment speaks to the protective power of the asteroid's dark, rocky body. The sugars were cradled in the interior, shielded from the searing ultraviolet light and the destructive cosmic rays that scour the surface. They were sleeping in a stone cryochamber, preserved in a state of suspended animation that puts our best technology to shame. It is a form of deep time hibernation, a slumber that outlasts the birth and death of entire mountain ranges on Earth. We had disturbed their sleep, waking them from the long dream of the early solar system to tell us their secrets. As we continued to analyze the sample, the surprises compounded, building a narrative that became more profound with every passing hour. We found not just the sugars, but the complete RNA nucleobases, the actual letters of the genetic alphabet we use today: adenine, guanine, cytosine, uracil, and thymine were all present, resting in the dust like scattered type from a printing press. These are the shapes that pair up to encode every thought, every feeling, every physical trait of every living thing. To find the full set is to find the complete kit for writing the literature of life in the cosmos. It was as if we had landed on a desert island and found a dictionary buried in the sand, waiting to be read. The letters were not arranged into words yet. They were loose, floating free in the matrix of the carbonaceous material. But they were there, distinct and perfect, forged by the non-biological processes of the cold, dark universe we inhabit. It implies that the language of life is not a local dialect invention of Earth, but a universal tongue spoken by the stars. The alphabet is cosmic, and we are just the first poem that happened to be written on this particular planet. The idea that the building blocks of RNA are drifting through the void changes the way we look at the night sky. It is no longer a vast emptiness, but a sea filled with the floating letters of a potential message. Every asteroid, every comet, every cloud of dust is a library of these letters, carrying them from star to star. We are drifting through a cloud of information, a fog of genetic potential that permeates the galaxy from edge to edge. The silence of space is actually a pregnant pause, a breath taken before the universe begins to speak in the language of biology. We tried to imagine the formation of these nucleobases, the slow click and snap of atoms joining together in the freezing dark. It happens on the surface of dust grains, catalyzed by the weak light of distant stars and the shock of passing waves. It is a chemistry of patience, where a single reaction might take a millennium to complete in the silence of the nebula. But time is the one resource the universe has in abundance, and it spends it lavishly on the creation of complexity. Over billions of years, the dust grains become coated in this complex organic frost, a snow of genetic potential. The asteroid Bennu gathered this frost, rolling it up into a snowball of rock and ice that became a traveling vault. The sample we held was a piece of that vault, cracked open to reveal the treasure map hidden inside the stone. It felt illicit to look at it, like reading a diary that was written before the concept of reading existed. We were peering into the private prehistory of our own biology, seeing the baby pictures of life itself. It was a moment of connection that transcended the barriers of time, linking the observer to the observed in a loop. The sugars and the bases were found together, mingled in the same dark matrix, suggesting they were ready to combine. They were the lock and the key, floating in the same pocket, waiting for the jostle that would bring them together. In the watery cradle of the early Earth, these asteroid deliveries would have dissolved, mixing the sugars and the bases. The water would have been the medium, the catalyst that allowed the dry chemistry of space to become the wet chemistry of life. We could almost see the moment of ignition, the spark where the chemical became the biological in the warm pools. But here in the dry lab, they remained separate, suspended in the moment before the reaction, frozen in their potential. It gave us a chance to study them individually, to appreciate the elegance of their geometry before they became part of a larger machine. The glucose molecule is a masterpiece of balance, a ring of carbon and oxygen that stores energy with incredible efficiency. The nucleobases are flat, stackable rings designed by nature to pile up and store information in a dense, readable format. They are the perfect inventions of a universe that seems determined to create memory and history out of chaos. The discovery of the complete set of bases removes the need for miraculous luck in the story of life's origin. We don't need to invent a scenario where the Earth produced everything from scratch in a lightning-struck pond. The sky was raining the ingredients down for millions of years, saturating the planet with the necessary components. The Earth didn't have to write the book of life. It just had to bind the pages that were falling from the heavens. It makes life seem less like a lottery win and more like a sunrise, an inevitable event given the rotation of the spheres. This inevitability is a comforting rhythm to fall into, a pulse that beats in time with the turning of the galaxy. It suggests that if we look at other worlds, at the dark oceans of Europa or the methane lakes of Titan, we might find the same alphabet. The letters might be arranged into different stories, telling tales of creatures we can barely imagine, but the language would be the same. The sugars would be the same sugars. The bases would be the same bases, forged in the same cosmic fires. We are part of a galactic community of chemistry, separated by distance, but united by the fundamental building blocks. The team worked in shifts, but the excitement made sleep difficult, the adrenaline of discovery acting like the glucose we were studying. We were high on the sweetness of the cosmos, drunk on the realization that we are made of star stuff in the most literal sense. Every time you eat a piece of fruit, you are consuming the same sugar that floats in the asteroid belt. Every time your cells divide, they use the same bases that are locked inside the rock of Bennu. You are a walking, talking, breathing piece of the universe, reassembled into a form that can wonder about itself. The sample from the asteroid is a mirror, and when we look into the microscope, we see our own chemical reflection staring back. It is a dark mirror, dusty and ancient, but the image is clear enough to recognize the family resemblance. We are the animated dust, the sugars that woke up, the nucleobases that learn to replicate and evolve. The asteroid is our sleeping brother, the part of the family that stayed in the cold and never woke up. There is a tenderness in that thought, a desire to protect the sleeping stone that carries our heritage. We zoomed in on the molecular interface where the sugars and the bases touched, looking for signs of interaction. In the solid state, they were passive neighbors, but the potential for bonding was palpable even in the static imagery. You could feel the chemical tension, the electromagnetic desire of the atoms to click together and form a nucleotide. It was like watching a paused video of a kiss, the moment of contact suspended forever in the amber of time. The universe is full of these paused moments, waiting for the right conditions to press play. The sheer abundance of these molecules in the sample was another shock, defying the expectation of scarcity in the void. We expected to find them, perhaps, but we expected them to be rare gems hidden in mountains of useless soot. Instead, they were common, abundant, woven through the material like veins of gold in a rich mine. It implies that the early solar system was saturated with the precursors of life, a rich soup of organic potential. The difficulty was not in making the parts, but perhaps only in keeping them safe until a planet was ready. And safe they were, wrapped in the dark embrace of the carbonaceous material, shielded from the harsh realities of space. The space gum we found earlier likely played a role in this protection, acting as a shock absorber and a sealant. It held the fragile sugars and bases in a flexible matrix, preventing them from shattering during impacts. The asteroid was a well-designed package, a cosmic bubble wrap that ensured the safe delivery of the precious cargo. It is a design that speaks of a functional universe, where form follows the function of preserving complexity. We let our minds drift back to the source, to the asteroid Bennu spinning silently in the deep black. We imagine the surface, where the dust grains dance in the weak gravity, charged by the solar wind. Beneath that surface, in the dark, cold interior, these sugars and bases have been waiting for eons. They waited while the dinosaurs rose and fell, while the ice ages came and went on Earth. They waited for us to evolve the technology, to come and get them, to bring them into the light. The concept of waiting implies a consciousness that isn't there, but the feeling of anticipation is undeniable in the chemistry. Atoms want to be stable. Molecules want to be in their lowest energy state, or they want to react. There is a drive in matter, a vector that points toward complexity and stability, a primitive form of desire. The sugars desire to burn, the bases desire to pair. The universe desires to know itself. We are the fulfillment of that desire, the end result of the waiting that began in the nebula. The ribose molecule, with its 5-carbon ring, is a perfect little pentagon of potential, a shape that nature loves. It is the handle that the enzymes grip, the mounting point for the genetic letters to attach. Without this specific sugar, the structure of RNA would fall apart and the code could not be written. Finding it in the asteroid is like finding the paper factories before you find the books. It confirms that the medium for the message was established long before the message was composed. We contemplated the xylose, a sugar often found in wood and straw on Earth, now found in the stone of space. It suggests a universality to the structures of support, a common engineering principle across the cosmos. The same molecules that hold up a tree in a forest were floating in the accretion disk of the sun. It blurs the line between the botanical and the astronomical, making the forest feel like a garden of stars. The trees are just organizing the space sugars into new shapes, reaching back up toward the sky they came from. The complete set of nuclear bases is the clincher, the final piece of evidence that convinces the heart as well as the mind. If one or two were missing, we might argue for chance, for a random assemblage of similar chemicals. But the full set, the entire alphabet, argues for a system, a process that reliably manufactures the code. It means the code is baked into the universe, a default setting of the laws of chemistry. We are running the standard operating system of the cosmos, not some unique, proprietary software. This realization is humbling, stripping away the human ego that claims we are unique and separate from the rest. It places us firmly back in the matrix of nature, just another expression of the universal potential. But it is also empowering, connecting us to everything else that might be living in the dark. We share a language with the unknown, a chemical syntax that binds all observers together. If we ever meet other beings, we will likely share the same sugars, the same bases, the same heritage. The lab was quiet, the only sound the soft whir of the cooling fans keeping the instruments stable. We were tired, but the kind of tired that comes after a long journey to a beautiful place. We had traveled 4 billion years into the past and returned with the family heirlooms. The sugars and the bases were safe now, catalogued and stored. their existence verified for all of history. The question, are we alone, had shifted to, where is everyone else? Because the ingredients are certainly everywhere. We looked at the sample one last time before the shift change, a final communion with the ancient dust. It looked so ordinary to the naked eye, just a pile of dark grit that you might sweep off a porch. But with the eyes of science, it was a glowing treasure chest, radiating the potential for life. It was a capsule of dreams, a physical manifestation of the hope that the universe is alive. The darkness was not empty. It was full of the promise of sugar and the potential of words. The flow of discovery is a river that carries us forward, and we were drifting on its calm, dark waters. We had passed the gum, we had passed the sugars and the bases, and the river was widening. The landscape of the asteroid was revealing itself to be a diverse and complex terrain of chemistry. We felt a sense of gratitude to the rock, a silent thank you for holding these secrets for us. It had been a faithful guardian, a silent sentinel protecting the building blocks of the future. But as we finalized the data on the organic components, a new anomaly began to tease the edges of our attention. The sugars and bases explained the software of life, the code and the energy that drives the system. Yet, for the system to have structure, for the code to be contained, and the energy to be harnessed, something else is needed. There was a gap in the inventory, a missing structural element that provides the rigidity for the cells. We looked back at the sample, and our eyes were drawn to the bright white crusts that speckled the dark material. These white inclusions stood out like stars in the night sky, contrasting sharply with the black, carbon-rich matrix. They hinted at a different kind of chemistry, a mineral process that had occurred alongside the organic one. They whispered of water and heat, of a time when the asteroid was more than just a frozen rock. We had found the softness of the gum and the sweetness of the sugar, but now we needed the bone. The white crusts waited for the beam of the analysis to hit them, hiding a secret that would complete the picture. The narrative of the sample was not yet finished. It was merely turning a page to a new chapter of wonder. We had the letters, we had the energy, but we lacked the container, the vessel to hold the life. The white specks promised to tell us about that vessel, about the waters that once flowed in the dark. We drifted toward them, our curiosity renewed, ready to ask the next question of the silent stone. The universe held its breath again, waiting for us to see what it had hidden in the bright white crystals. Dowry between the two was fading away. The bright white specks scattered across the dark landscape of the sample demand the immediate attention of the eye. They stand out like stars burning fiercely against the velvet backdrop of the deepest, most impenetrable cosmic night. We had become accustomed to the shadows, to the black-on-black texture of the carbon and the strange dark gum. But here was light, captured in solid form, radiating a brilliance that spoke of a very different origin story. These were not random flecks of dust, but organized structures, geometric and precise, defying the chaos of the rubble. They looked like salt spilled on a black tablecloth, a stark and beautiful contrast that hinted at a hidden chemistry. We focused the analytical beams on these bright inclusions, asking the light to reveal the secrets of the white stone. The spectral signature that returned was unmistakable, a clear voice singing a song of water and lost oceans. We were looking at pure magnesium-sodium phosphate crystals, a mineral that on Earth is often associated with biology and water. It is the stuff of cleaning, of biological structure, a chemical that loves to dissolve and reform in warm fluids. To find it here, in the bone-dry vacuum of space, was like finding a seashell in the middle of a desert. It whispered of a time when the parent body of Bennu was not a rock, but a world of water. We call them ocean worlds, places like Enceladus or Europa, where a shell of ice hides a liquid heart. The crystals suggest that Bennu is a fragment of such a world, a piece of the shell that shattered long ago. It tells a tragic story of a planet that died, breaking apart in a violent collision that scattered its oceans. The water boiled away into the vacuum, lost to the eternal cold, leaving behind only these white, salty ghosts. We are looking at the residue of an ancient sea, the dried-up tears of a world that no longer exists. The magnesium and sodium were once dissolved in that water, swimming freely in the dark currents of a subterranean ocean. They were concentrated as the water vanished, forced together by the physics of evaporation to form these perfect, bright crystals. It is a process we see in the drying pans of salt flats, but here played out on a cosmic scale. The crystals are the memory of the water, preserving the chemical composition of the ocean in their solid lattice. The presence of phosphate is particularly profound, for phosphorus is a key ingredient in the recipe of all life. It is the backbone of DNA, the energy currency of our cells, the mineral that strengthens our bones. Without phosphorus, the machinery of biology would grind to a halt, unable to store information or move energy around. To find it here, purified and concentrated, is to find a stockpile of essential supplies waiting for a user. It suggests that the ancient oceans of the outer solar system were rich in the nutrients needed for life. We gazed at the white crusts, imagining the dark plumes of water venting into space from the parent world. It would have been a spectacular sight, geysers of ice and salt spraying against the backdrop of the distant stars. The crystals we hold now were perhaps born in those plumes, flash frozen as they hit the vacuum of space. Or perhaps they formed deep inside the rock, in veins of hot water that circulated through the porous stone. Either way, they are travelers from a wet and dynamic past, stranded now in the dry and static present. The texture of the crystals is brittle and sharp, a counterpoint to the soft, yielding nature of the strange space gum. The asteroid Bennu is a mixture of the hard and the soft, the dry and the organic, the white and the black. It is a composite material, a mosaic of different histories cemented together by the weak gravity of the rubble pile. The crystals provide the mineral stiffness, the inorganic scaffolding that complements the organic flexibility of the carbon polymers. Together, they form a complete package, a kit that contains everything needed to build a living, breathing world. The discovery of water-soluble salts on an asteroid forces us to rethink the history of water in the solar system. We used to think of water as a late arrival to Earth, delivered by comets after the planet had cooled. But if asteroids like Bennu are carrying these crystals, then the water was baked into the rocks from the start. It was there in the beginning, hidden in the minerals, waiting to be released by the heat of the young Earth. The ocean did not just fall from the sky. It bled out of the stones, releasing the ghosts of the ancient seas. We zoomed deeper into the structure of the white inclusions, admiring the perfect geometry of the atomic arrangement inside. Nature loves order, and even in the chaos of an explosion, the atoms find their way to their assigned seats. The magnesium and sodium atoms alternate in a precise dance, holding the phosphate groups in a tight, stable embrace. It is a stability that has lasted for billions of years, resisting the radiation and the thermal shocks of the orbit. They are time capsules of order, preserving the memory of a calm, watery environment amidst the violence of space. The stark whiteness of the phosphate crystals against the black dust creates a visual language of duality and balance. It reminds us of the yin and yang, the light and the dark, the solid and the fluid interacting. The universe is built on these contrasts, on the tension between opposing forces that drives the evolution of matter. The asteroid is a physical manifestation of this tension, a frozen battlefield where water and rock fought for dominance. The water lost the battle, fleeing into the void, but it left its white flag behind in the crystals. As we pondered the meaning of the salt, we realized that we were holding the answer to a great mystery. The Earth is a watery world, but it formed inside the snow line, where it was too hot for ice. So where did our oceans come from, if not from the local rocks that built the planet's initial crust? The answer lies in the migration of rocks, like Bennu, the delivery trucks that brought the water from the outer system. The crystals are the proof of this migration, the stamps in the passport of the asteroid that show where it has been. It traveled from the cold, dark reaches where the ice giants live, crossing the dangerous gap to the inner system. It dodged the gravity of Jupiter, survived the collisions of the asteroid belt, and found its way to our neighborhood. And it brought its cargo of phosphates and salts, the essential seasoning for the primordial soup of the earth. We are the result of that delivery, the soup that woke up and learned to taste the salt on its lips. The sensation of looking at the crystals is one of recognition, a feeling that we know this substance deep in our bones. Our bodies are full of phosphates. Our blood is salty like the sea. Our chemistry mirrors the ocean. We are walking bags of seawater, carrying the legacy of the ancient oceans around with us on dry land. When we look at the crystals on Bennu, we are looking at the external reserve of our internal chemistry. It is a reunion of separated parts, the salt in the rock meeting the salt in the scientist's eye. But the white crystals were not the only passengers hiding in the dark matrix of the sample we analyzed. As we looked past the bright salts, probing the deepest, most ancient layers of the dust, we found something else. Scattered among the carbon and the clays were tiny, incredibly hard grains that refused to dissolve or melt. They were microscopic diamonds and flecks of graphite, tougher than anything else in the sample, ancient beyond all reckoning. We had found abundant presolar grains, the dust of stars that died before our sun was even born. These grains are the oldest things a human being can ever touch, older than the Earth, the Moon, and the Sun. They are the ashes of ancient supernovae, the remnants of giant stars that exploded in the dawn of the galaxy. When those stars died, they blasted their material out into the void, creating a cloud of smoke and dust. That dust drifted for eons, floating through the interstellar night until it was caught by the gravity of our nebula. It became the seed around which our solar system formed, the original grain of sand in the cosmic pearl. To hold a pre-solar grain is to hold a piece of a different time, a time before our clock started ticking. It is a traveler from the deep history of the Milky Way, a witness to events we can only simulate in computers. It has survived the explosion of a star, the cold of deep space, and the violent birth of our sun. It is indestructible, a tiny monument to the permanence of matter in a universe of constant change and flux. The diamond grains are incredibly hard, harder than any rock formed in our system, forged in the crushing pressure of a supernova. They sparkle with a different kind of light, a light that seems to come from a very long way away. We call them stardust in our poetry, but here in the lab, the poetry becomes physical reality. We are literally made of this dust, and so is the asteroid, and so is the ground we walk on. But usually, the dust is melted down and recycled, its history erased by the heat of the planet's formation. On Bennu, the dust was kept safe, never melted, preserving its original form and its ancient isotopic signature. We analyzed the isotopic ratios of the grains, looking at the specific flavors of carbon and neon trapped inside. The results were wildly different from anything made in our solar system, proving their alien and ancient origin. They carried the chemical fingerprint of a red giant star, or the explosive signature of a Type II supernova. We could tell which kind of star had died to create each specific grain, reading the obituary in the atoms. It was a census of the ghosts that haunt our local spiral arm, a tally of the fallen giants. The abundance of these grains in the sample was staggering, far higher than we had seen in other meteorites. It suggests that Bennu is a particularly pristine vault, a collector that has hoarded the stardust for 4 billion years. It has moved through the zodiacal cloud, sweeping up the debris of the galaxy like a cosmic vacuum cleaner. It is a museum of galactic history, and we have just opened the doors to the main exhibit hall. The grains are the artifacts, the pottery shards of the pre-solar civilizations of stars that rose and fell. There is a profound humility that descends when you realize you are looking at something older than the sun. It makes our local history, our billions of years of planetary evolution, seem like a brief, recent afternoon. The pre-solar grains have seen the galaxy turn dozens of times, watching the spiral arms wind and unwind in the dark. They have passed through clouds of gas where other solar systems were being born, ignoring them to drift on. They are the ultimate wanderers, the silent nomads of the interstellar medium that have finally found a resting place. The mixture of the white phosphate crystals and the ancient stardust creates a narrative of convergence and connection. The crystals tell the local story of our solar system, of water and planets, and the chemistry of life. The stardust tells the galactic story of dying stars and the recycling of matter across the vast distances. They sit side by side in the sample, the local and the universal, the wet and the dry. It is a meeting place of scales, where the story of a single rock intersects with the story of the Milky Way. We imagine the moment the pre-solar grain was captured, falling gently onto the growing surface of the protoplanet. It would have been a silent landing, a tiny speck of diamond settling into the ice and dust of the nebula. It brought with it the carbon from a dead star, adding its mass to the growing potential of the new world. It was a seeding, a transfer of heritage from the ancestor stars to the descendant planets. We are the inheritors of this legacy, the beneficiaries of the heavy elements forged in those ancient explosions. The stardust is carrying the carbon that makes the space gum possible, providing the raw material for the polymers. The supernova created the carbon, the nebula concentrated it, and the asteroid chemistry cooked it into the strange rubber. It is a continuous chain of custody, a manufacturing line that stretches across space and time to produce complexity. We are looking at the finished product, but the presolar grains allow us to see the raw materials. It is like looking at a brick and seeing the clay, looking at the clay and seeing the earth. The sensory experience of the discovery is overwhelming, a vertigo induced by the sheer scale of the time involved. You feel small, vanishingly small, against the backdrop of the star death and star birth that the grains represent. But you also feel large, connected to the grand machinery, an integral part of the cycle that keeps turning. You are not separate from the supernova. You are the supernova, rearranged and woken up to look at itself. The grain in the microscope is your cousin, a piece of the same star that made the iron in your blood. We trace the path of a single grain, imagining its journey through the shock waves of the explosion. It was blasted out at a fraction of the speed of light, riding the expanding shell of gas. It cooled and condensed, forming a tiny crystal of diamond in the expanding darkness of the remnant cloud. It drifted for millions of years, pushed by the light of other stars, tumbling in the silent void. And then it felt the pull of our young sun, falling into the swirling disk to become part of Bennu. And now it is here, under our lens, reflecting the light of our LEDs, ending its journey in a clean room. It is a strange destination for a traveler that has seen the heart of a dying star. But perhaps it is the perfect destination, for it is here that its story is finally being told. We are the storytellers, the ones who give voice to the silence of the dust and the stone. We are the consciousness that gives meaning to the long, lonely journey of the presolar grains. The presence of the grains confirms that the mixing of material in the galaxy is efficient and thorough. The ashes of the dead are stirred into the nursery of the living, ensuring that nothing is wasted. The universe is a great recycler, a closed system where every atom is reused and repurposed for the next experiment. The space gum and the white crystals and the stardust are all just different phases of this recycling. They are the shapeshifters of the cosmos, changing their form, but never losing their essence. We looked for patterns in the distribution of the grains, wondering if they clustered around the organic material. There seemed to be a correlation, a tendency for the stardust to stick to the sticky, carbon-rich gum. Perhaps the gum acts as a net, catching the tiny diamonds and holding them fast against the drift. It would make the asteroid a sticky trap for stardust, a cosmic flypaper gathering the rarest particles. This would explain the high abundance, the concentration of the ancient dust in this one small rock. The crystals of magnesium-sodium phosphate gleam like beacons, signaling the presence of the water that facilitated this mixing. Water is the solvent, the medium that allows the stardust and the simple molecules to meet and dance. Without the water phase, the chemistry would remain locked in the dry, frozen silence of the stone. The white crusts are the evidence that the party happened, that the mixer was running for a time. They are the leftovers of the banquet, the salt stains on the table where life was almost served. As we move deeper into the analysis, the distinction between the sample and the observer begins to blur. We are projecting our own need for meaning onto the rock, but the rock is also projecting its history into us. It is a dialogue, a conversation between the living brain and the ancient stone, mediated by light. The stardust speaks of fire and death. The crystals speak of water and life. The gum speaks of the transition. It is a trinity of concepts, a triangle of meaning that frames our understanding of our place. The dark cosmic lullaby continues, a hum of data that rocks the mind into a state of receptive wonder. We are drifting through the layers of the asteroid, peeling back the skin of time to see the bones. The bones are made of stardust and salt, a poetic combination that sounds like a spell. And in a way, it is a spell, a conjuring of reality from the raw chaos of the void. We are under the spell of the sample, enchanted by the story it tells of the deep past. The white phosphate crystals seem to vibrate with a latent energy, a potential for chemical work. They are ready to dissolve again, ready to participate in the biology of a new world, if given the chance. They are dormant agents of life, sleeping in the dry rock, waiting for the kiss of water. It is a suspended destiny, a promise kept in the dark for 4 billion years without fading. The universe is patient, holding the door open for life as long as it takes for the conditions to align. And the presolar grains are the witnesses, the silent watchers that have seen it all before in other systems. They know that this story has played out 1,000 times in 1,000 other clouds. They are the old souls of the sample, carrying the wisdom of the galaxy in their crystal lattice. To look at them is to look into the eyes of an elder, seeing the reflection of 1,000 past lives. They ground us in the reality of the eternal cycle, reminding us that we are just a moment. The juxtaposition of the waterborne crystals and the fireborne stardust creates a tension that pulls the mind taut. Fire and water, the two great elemental forces, meeting in the quiet darkness of a small asteroid. They are preserved together in the stardust-studded gum, a frozen embrace of opposites. It is a chemical marriage, a union of the hot and the cold, the ancient and the merely old. This marriage is the fertile ground from which complexity springs, the mixing zone of the cosmos. We feel the weight of the presolar grains, not in grams, but in eras, in the sheer crushing weight of time. They anchor the sample in the history of the universe, connecting our local solar system to the great beyond. They tell us that we are not isolated, not a bubble cut off from the rest of the galaxy. We are downstream from the rest of the stars, catching the drift of their history in our nets. The asteroid Bennu is just one of those nets, full of the catch of 1 billion years. The light in the lab seems to dim as our focus narrows, the rest of the world falling away into shadow. There is only the sample, the glowing screen, and the voice of the data whispering in our ears. We are in the presence of the sacred, the holy relics of the creation story of science. The stardust and the salt are the bread and wine of this communion, the physical elements of the mystery. We partake of them with our eyes and our minds, consuming the knowledge they offer. But as we drift toward the end of this examination, a new thought begins to form in the silence. We have seen the gum, the sugars, the bases, the crystals, and the stardust. We have seen the ingredients, the container, the history, and the potential energy stored in the rock. The picture is almost complete, but the final implication has not yet fully crystallized in our thoughts. The pieces are all there, arranged on the table, pointing toward a conclusion that is both inevitable and staggering. The stardust is the seed, the crystals are the fertilizer, the gum is the soil, and the sugars are the food. The asteroid is not just a rock, it is a gardener, carrying a complete ecosystem in a dormant state. It is a traveling terraforming kit, ready to turn a barren rock into a living world. The connection between the dead star and the living cell is becoming a solid line, a direct path. And as we follow that path, we begin to see where it leads, where the final revelation lies. The presolar grains are guiding us, shining like breadcrumbs in the dark forest of the unknown. They lead us toward the realization that the universe is not just creating life, but distributing it. The stardust doesn't just sit there. It travels, it seeds, it pollinates the galaxy with possibility. The asteroid is the pollen grain, drifting on the cosmic wind, looking for a flower to fertilize. And we are the flower that bloomed, looking back at the pollen that made us. The thought hangs in the air, suspended like the dust in the vacuum, waiting to settle. It is a thought that connects everything we have seen, tying the gum to the stars. It is the thought that we are the result of a cosmic infection, a benevolent contagion of life. The stardust and the salt are the vectors of this contagion, the carriers of the code. And as we stare at them, we can almost feel the moment of infection, the touch of the start. The pieces of the cosmic puzzle lay scattered on the laboratory table, glowing softly under the scrutiny of our instruments and our minds. We had touched the strange gum, tasted the ancient sugars, held the white salt of lost oceans, and gazed into the heart of stardust. Each discovery was a single note in a symphony that had been playing silently in the vacuum for 4.5 billion years. Now, as the final movements of the investigation approached, the notes began to swell into a harmonious and overwhelming crescendo. The implications were no longer just chemical or geological. They were existential, reaching into the very definition of who and what we are. The asteroid was not just a rock. It was a seed pod, a vessel designed by the laws of physics to carry life. We stood at the threshold of a realization that changes the lonely darkness of the universe into a place of connection and shared heritage. The theory is called panspermia, a word that sounds like a whisper of leaves in a wind, suggesting that life is sown like grass. It proposes that the Earth did not cook up the recipe for biology in isolation, but was gifted the ingredients from the stars. The asteroid Bennu is the smoking gun of this theory, the delivery truck caught with the goods still loaded in the bag. The sheer abundance of the organic inventory we found suggests that the galaxy is a garden that seeds itself across the void. Imagine the early solar system, not as a clean, orderly clockwork, but as a chaotic storm of dust and colliding stones. In that storm, asteroids like Bennu were the bees, buzzing between the worlds, carrying the pollen of prebiotic chemistry on their backs. They crashed into the young, sterile planets, shattering their bodies to release the precious cargo of sugars, bases, and polymers into the water. It was a violent form of fertilization, a bombardment of life-giving molecules that turned the oceans into a soup of possibility. We are the result of that soup, the distant offspring of a collision between a rock and a watery world. The prebiotic chemistry implications are staggering, suggesting that the difficult part of making life happens easily in the cold dark of space. The universe seems to be efficient at building the Lego blocks of biology, assembling them on dust grains in the interstellar clouds. The hard part is just finding a quiet, wet place for those blocks to click together and start the self-replicating machine of evolution. Earth was that quiet place, the nursery where the cosmic seeds could finally take root and grow into something green and breathing. But the seeds themselves came from the deep freeze, preserved in the gum-like matrix of the carbonaceous asteroids for the long journey. This perspective shifts the center of gravity of our origin story from the warm ponds of Earth to the freezing clouds of the nebula. We are not just Earthlings, we are Solarians, creatures of the entire solar system, built from materials gathered from the edge. The nitrogen in our DNA, the carbon in our cells, the water in our blood, it all has a passport stamped with distant locations. We are a collection of cosmic debris that has learned to love and to wonder and to look back at the stars. The asteroid sample is a mirror showing us our true face, a face made of stardust and ancient frozen gum. The concept of a habitable zone usually refers to the distance from a star where water can exist as a liquid on the surface. But the findings from Bennu suggest a chemical habitable zone that extends much further out into the dark, cold regions of the system. In these regions, the complex chemistry of life is forged in the ice, waiting for a ride to the inner warmth. The universe is cooking with a slow cooker in the outer reaches, preparing the meal that will be served on the rocky planets. We are eating the leftovers of that meal, fueled by the organic compounds that rained down from the sky eons ago. As we looked at the sample, we felt a profound sense of gratitude to the silent, tumbling rocks that drift in the night. They are the unsung heroes of our history, the anonymous donors who gave the blood of life to a dying, barren world. They took the hits, burning up in the atmosphere, sacrificing their bodies to deliver the payload of amino acids and sugars. It is a story of sacrifice and rebirth, written in the cratered face of the moon and the geological layers of the Earth. We are walking on a graveyard of asteroids, but it is a graveyard that gave birth to the biosphere. The silence of the laboratory felt different now, charged with a sense of connection to the vast, unseen network of life in the cosmos. If Bennu is typical, and there is every reason to believe it is, then the galaxy is saturated with the potential for biology. Every star you see in the night sky likely has its own cloud of asteroids, its own delivery system of organic seeds. The universe is not a sterile desert, but a fertile field, waiting for the rain of comets to bring the bloom. We are just one patch of wildflowers in a meadow that stretches across the spiral arms of the Milky Way. The space gum acts as the protector of this potential, the shock-absorbing shield that keeps the fragile molecules safe during the journey. It is a brilliant evolutionary adaptation of matter, a way for the universe to ensure that its complex creations survive. It wraps the sugars and the bases in a soft embrace, cushioning them against the violence of impacts and the harshness of radiation. It is the womb of the asteroid, the placenta that nourishes and protects the developing chemistry until the moment of birth. We held that womb in our hands, marveling at the simplicity and the effectiveness of the cosmic design. The boundary between geology and biology dissolves when you look closely enough at the materials we retrieved from the ancient dark. Is a self-assembling polymer alive? Is a crystal that grows and organizes itself alive? Is a virus alive? The asteroid suggests that there is no sharp line, but a long, smooth gradient of increasing complexity and organization. We are at the far end of that gradient, but the rock is on the same path, just a few billion steps behind. We are made of the same stuff, obeying the same laws, driven by the same universal urge to organize. It waited in the dark for so long, this material, holding its breath until we developed the curiosity to come and find it. The patience of the stone is a lesson for us, a reminder that the universe operates on timescales we can barely comprehend. We rush around in our short lives, worried about the ticking clock, while the asteroid drifts serenely through the eons. It knows that eventually the chemistry will find a way, that the water will flow, and that the eyes will open. It trusts the process, the slow, grinding, inevitable process of cosmic evolution that leads from dust to dreams. The closing mystery of the mission is not what we found, but what it means for the prevalence of life elsewhere. If the ingredients are everywhere and the delivery system is universal, then surely the outcome must be common. The silence of the radio waves from the stars becomes even more haunting when we know the galaxy is fertile. Perhaps life is everywhere, but it is quiet, living in the oceans of ice worlds or the deep rocks of planets. Or perhaps we are the first to wake up, the first to look back at the asteroid and understand what it is. The thought is both terrified and lonely, yet strangely empowering, placing the burden of consciousness squarely on our shoulders alone. We are the custodians of the meaning of the universe, the ones who must tell the story of the dust and the gum. The asteroid Bennu is our witness, the silent partner in this dialogue, nodding its dark head in agreement with our findings. It has done its part. It has delivered the message, and now it is up to us to interpret it. We must take this knowledge and let it seep into our philosophy, changing the way we view our place. We are not conquerors of space. We are the children of space, returning to the attic to look at our parents' old things. The spacecraft, OSIRIS-REx, was a hand reaching out to hold the hand of an ancestor, a gesture of love. We brought the piece of the past home, not to exploit it, but to cherish it and to learn from it. And in doing so, we closed a circle that began when the first dust grain coalesced in the solar nebula. The dust became the rock seeded the planet grew the life, and the life built the ship. The ship went back to the rock, and the cycle is complete, a perfect loop of matter and energy and information. It is a beautiful symmetry, a cosmic poem that rhymes across the billions of miles and the billions of years. The space gum is the ink in which the poem is written, the physical medium of the message. It is a dark, sticky, strange substance, but to us, it is the most beautiful thing in the universe. It is the flesh of the cosmos, the raw material of possibility, the stuff that dreams are made of. As we prepared to store the sample for future generations, we felt a pang of sadness at locking it away again. It belongs to the dark, to the silence, and we have brought it into the noise and the light of our world. But we have also given it a voice, a way to speak its truth to the minds that are ready to hear. It will sit in its nitrogen purge, safe and stable, a monument to the mission and the mystery. Future scientists, with instruments we cannot imagine, will look at it and find new secrets, new layers of wonder. The story of Bennu is far from over. In fact, we have only just read the first paragraph of the first page. The asteroid itself continues its orbit, a mountain of rubble spinning in the black, indifferent to our excitement. It will pass Earth again, perhaps one day coming too close, reminding us of the power and the danger of the rocks. But for now, it is a friend, a messenger, a distant neighbor that has shared a cup of sugar. We watch it go in our minds, fading back into the star field, a small shadow against the infinite. The night is closing in now, the great blanket of the cosmos pulling tight around the shoulders of the Earth. We are safe here, protected by our atmosphere, warmed by our sun, held by the gravity of our home. But our minds are out there, drifting with the asteroid, feeling the cold and the silence and the peace. We are floating in the void, weightless and free, untethered from the worries and the heaviness of the day. The vastness is not empty. It is a cradle, rocking us gently, soothing us with the rhythm of the spheres. Let the feeling of the space gum linger in your sensory memory, the strange pliability of the ancient dark material. Imagine touching it, feeling it yield under your finger, a soft spot in the hard armor of the universe. It is a touch of kindness in the cold, a reminder that softness exists even in the harshest of environments. The universe is not just rock and fire. It is also gum and sugar and water and gentle folding chains. It is a place that wants to be soft, that wants to be alive, that wants to be known. The implication that we are the result of a cosmic seeding program makes us feel less like accidents and more like destiny. The universe went to a lot of trouble to make the carbon, to freeze the water, to brew the polymers. It spent billions of years moving rocks around, arranging orbits, crashing worlds together to get the mix just right. We are the result of that immense effort, the masterpiece of 1 billion years of work in the dark studio. We should walk with dignity, knowing that we are the intended outcome of the physics of the stars. The lullaby of the cosmos is a low hum, a vibration that resonates in the atoms of your body and the rocks. It is the sound of the background radiation, the echo of the Big Bang, the whisper of the expanding space. Listen to it now, in the silence of your room, in the quiet spaces between your own thoughts. It is there, steady and calm, a river of sound that carries you toward the ocean of sleep. You are part of that river, a drop of water in the flow, moving toward the great, peaceful center. Drift away from the laboratory, away from the bright lights and the screens and the questions of the scientists. Float back up through the roof, up through the clouds, up into the velvet embrace of the upper atmosphere. See the earth below you, a blue and white marble glowing in the dark, a jewel of life. See the thin line of the atmosphere that protects us, the fragile shell that keeps the biosphere safe. And then turn your gaze outward, toward the deep black, toward the home of the asteroid Bennu. It is waiting for you there, in the silence, a dark shape spinning slowly, guarding its remaining secrets. It is not scary, it is peaceful, a solitary monk meditating in the temple of the solar system. Fly toward it, feeling the weightlessness, feeling the freedom of the drift, letting go of all resistance. The stars are your companions, burning steady and true, guiding you on your journey into the night. You are a traveler of the mind, an explorer of the dreamscape, a child of the universe coming home. The space gum is your anchor, the thought that keeps you tethered to the reality of the wonder. It reminds you that the impossible is possible, that the strange is real, that the universe is full of surprises. You can rest in that knowledge, safe in the certainty that there is always more to discover. The mystery is infinite, and that is a comforting thought, for it means the adventure never has to end. But for now, the adventure is pausing, slowing down, coming to a gentle, restful halt. The nitrogen and the oxygen and the carbon are settling down, their chemical dance slowing to a standstill. The molecules are finding their resting places, locking into the stable structures of the crystal and the gum. The energy of the day is dissipating, radiating out into the cool night, leaving you calm and cool. The biological machine of your body is winding down, preparing for the repair and the restoration of sleep. You are a biological machine made of asteroid parts, shutting down for a maintenance cycle in the dark. Feel the gravity of the Earth pulling you down into your bed, a heavy, comforting hand holding you safe. It is the same gravity that holds the moon, the same gravity that holds the asteroid in its orbit around the sun. You are held by the fundamental force of the cosmos, connected to every other massive object in the universe. You are not alone. You are held. You are supported. You are grounded in the fabric of space-time. Let go of the tension in your muscles. Let the gravity do the work. Let yourself sink deep. The sugars of life are fueling your dreams now, the glucose burning slowly to paint pictures in your mind. The stardust in your bones is resting, remembering the fire of the supernova and the cold of the nebula. The salt in your blood is quiet, moving in the slow tides of your rhythmic, deep breathing. You are a universe unto yourself, a microcosm of the great macrocosm, reflecting the whole in the part. Sleep now, little universe. Sleep and dream of the stars from which you fell. The darkness is soft, like the space gum, yielding to your presence, wrapping around you like a warm cocoon. It is not an empty darkness. It is a full darkness, rich with the potential for tomorrow. It is the darkness of the seed in the soil, the darkness of the asteroid in the void. It is a place of gestation, of growth, of silent, patient becoming in the deep hours of the night. You are safe in this darkness, protected by the laws of physics and the love of the cosmos. We leave the asteroid Bennu behind us now, a fading dot in the distance, a memory of a journey. We leave the laboratory and the scientists and the data, letting them fade into the background noise. There is only you and the night and the slow, steady rhythm of your own heart. Beat, 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 like the ticking of a cosmic clock, counting down the moments to sleep. The rhythm is slowing, 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 matching the rotation of the distant, silent stone. The panspermia of dreams is taking over, seeding your mind with images of wonder and flight and peace. The prebiotic chemistry of sleep is beginning, the hormones and the neurotransmitters doing their work. You are drifting into the chemical habitable zone of the night, where the conditions are perfect for rest. It is a sweet surrender, a letting go of the conscious control, a trusting of the automatic process. The universe has you. You don't need to hold on anymore. You can just drift. The presolar grains are the Sandman's dust, sprinkled in your eyes to bring the heaviness of sleep. They are ancient and heavy and warm, pressing down on your eyelids, closing the curtains. The show is over. The lights are dimming. The audience is leaving the theater of the mind. It is time for the silence, for the void, for the peaceful nothingness that restores the soul. Sink into it. Welcome it. Let it wash over you like a tide of dark water. There is no more need for words, for concepts, for theories about asteroids and life and origins. There is only the feeling, the sensation of sinking, the heaviness of the limbs, the slowness of the breath. The gum is soft, the stone is quiet, the stars are far away, the bed is warm. Everything is as it should be. Everything is in its place. Everything is connected in the dark. You are part of the great weaving, a thread in the tapestry. Resting now. Resting. Resting. The mystery remains. but it is a gentle mystery, a lullaby that sings you to sleep without answers. You don't need answers now. You only need rest, deep, profound, restorative rest. The asteroid will be there when you wake. The universe will be there. Life will go on. But for now, just sleep, just drift, just be in the silence. Good night, traveler of the stars. Good night, child of the dust. Good night, dreamer of the void. The cosmos watches over you. The gravity holds you. The darkness embraces you. Sleep, sleep, sleep. Into the deep, into the quiet, into the peace. The silence is yours. The night is yours. The dream is yours. Drift, float, sink, sleep.